always turn out the way we expect them to, despite our best efforts. Sometimes this is because of unexpected events that are beyond our control, which we react to and may cause unintended outcomes to the unanticipated. How one responds to particular incidents can determine the success or failure of an initiative. It is important to learn from experiences of such events, but learning from mistakes and replicating positive outcomes is easier said than done. Facilitating this understanding by illuminating the factors associated with positive outcomes is the crux of the critical incident technique. Specifically, the critical incident technique employs rich qualitative inquiry to mine the circumstances which surround positive outcomes. By examining the behavior of the people involved and the outcomes of their behavior, the critical incident technique identifies lessons that can lead to greater personal and organizational effectiveness. In this presentation, we are going to share the history of the critical incident technique, how it is used, along with examples of use, the conditions required for use, and advantages and disadvantages of use. The technique grew from an acute need to improve aircrew bombing mission success in the Second World War. American psychologist John Flanagan interviewed crew members returning from particularly successful, or when still alive, disastrous bombing missions. These interviews identified the requirements, temperaments, and aptitudes necessary for successful missions. From there, Flanagan devised a series of pre-screening tests which placed each aircrew member in the most appropriate role to bring about victory. In the decades after the war ended, and his research was declassified, he and others successfully translated the technique for use in non-militarized industries, such as the medical, educational, and business industries. An incident may be defined as critical when the action taken contributed to an effective outcome. It helped solve a problem or resolve a situation. An incident may also be considered critical when the action resulted in an ineffective outcome. It partially resolved a problem but created new problems or a need for further action. It can be events and circumstances that make one stop and think, revisit one's assumptions, or impact one's personal and professional learning. At the collective level, it can be a systematic problem from the organizational maladaptation or an issue arising from stakeholders. The incident is defined as critical when the actions taken contributed to an effective or ineffective outcome. All incidents pertain to matters such as culture, knowledge, competence, relationships, beliefs, emotions, communication, or treatment. Flanagan describes a technique as a set of procedures for collecting direct observations of human behavior in such a way as to facilitate their potential usefulness in solving practical problems and developing broad psychological principles. To begin a critical incident technique intervention, it is essential to agree on whether the issue meets the established critical incident criteria, and then prepare a clear, concise statement of purpose of the incident. Next, understand what questions need to be addressed. Olivier Surratt says this helps prioritize the intervention and its expected impact against other priorities. He says to specifically ask, what were the events or circumstances that led to the critical incident? What were the behaviors of the agents that made these events or circumstances a critical incident? What were the outcomes of the critical incident? What were the possible future outcomes if behaviors remain unchanged? What were the possible future outcomes if behaviors change based on lessons learned? Then, decide on an investigative method and the population that will participate. Use appropriate tools to analyze the data, and then design and review strategies and plans for problem solving, implementation and monitoring, evaluation, and adjustments out of necessity. The critical incident technique is broken down using the steps in Gibbs' reflective cycle. The reflective model includes 6 essential steps that take into account feelings and emotions. In stage 1, briefly describe the event you are reflecting on. Some questions you might ask yourself are, where were you? Who else was there? Why were you there? What were you doing? In stage 2, identify what influenced your feelings and if they changed during the event. Ask yourself how you were feeling, what you were thinking, how did it make you feel, what do you think now? In stage 3, Try to evaluate or make a judgment about what has happened. What was good about the experience and what was bad about the experience? In Stage 4, break the event down. What were the key issues? What went well? What didn't go well? Examine the influencing factors and discover ways to improve. In Stage 5, develop an insight into your own and other people's behaviors and how they contributed to the outcome. Ask yourself, what could I have done differently? How could this have been improved? Your conclusion informs your action plan. In the final stage, think yourself forward into encountering the event again and to plan what you would do. Would you act differently, or would you be likely to do the same? Here, the cycle is tentatively completed and suggests that should the event occur again, it will be the focus of another reflective cycle. 3 factors are identified with successful critical incident technique studies. First, the topic incident of study must be critical in nature to the organization being studied. This does not imply good or bad, spectacular or normal, merely that it is significant. Second, the study should be conducted by an appropriate subject matter expert with experience in the technique, whether independent or in some combination of interview, focus group, diary analysis, or group survey. The expert must adeptly navigate and modify the inquiry as needed to paint the fullest picture surrounding the critical incident. Third, study participants should be guaranteed anonymity when providing feedback. Highly successful studies generally allow participants to tell stories or give long responses to targeted questions. Participants especially enjoy speaking about positive stories and must be ethically and emotionally cared for when probed about negative perceived critical incidents. Assuming a generous timeline proves acceptable, this technique provides one ideal feature for use in educational settings: a positive approach. Many educational settings struggle with petty infighting and politicking over scarce resources. This leads to a culture in which divergent opinions are unsafely expressed and high achievers are condemned for showing off. Negating this negative culture, the critical incident technique spends most of its interviewing time focusing on positive storytelling. Participants feel safe and enjoy the opportunity to speak candidly. This positive interviewing approach makes this a suitable technique for educational settings. Despite the namesake of this technique, it is our opinion that the term critical incident is a misnomer. In educational settings, momentous incidents generally require swift responses to maintain public image. The critical incident technique is more useful in 2 areas: when a positive incident generates a desire for replication, and when a systematic problem reaches its straw that broke the camel's back moment. Giving sufficient time to plumb the depths of a subject is crucial to this technique's success.